All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Consent agenda is approved unanimously. Next item on the agenda is item 4 for discussion, the consent agenda. There were none. 7 unfinished business. There's none. Number 8, we have 8A, which is adoption of the City of Phoenix strategic plan. It's on page 19 in the package. City Council came together for quite a few hours, and we worked on a list of strategies to improve the lives of Phoenix citizens, as well as a rough timeline for the execution of our goals. We had 22 to begin with. We synthesized it down to a prioritized list of 7. The department heads helped develop a set of 81 objectives and medical actions to support our goals. I just want to say thanks to our finance director, planning director, police department chief, public works director for helping us out doing that. After we approve it, we're going to post it to our website. One of my pet major objectives, and things I really want to get done, is the completion of comprehensive plan. I think that's really important. I'm going to open it up to council discussion. Anybody want to? Let me say one more thing before you do that. There was one item on page 31. I went over it with Steve Manager earlier today. It's a couple of wrong dates. There's a date listed for the council bank team.
It was really clarifying for the council, and I think that it helped us be strategic, as strategic planning is one to do, and think about, what can we do in a certain period of time, and what rises to the top of that priority list. So I'm really glad we went through this, and hopefully make it a regular practice, because I think it was really helpful.
Somebody else?
A big thank you to Dave Canner. He was really keeping us on track and well organized, and I think we could have done it without him.
Our original city manager had 2 real big goals. One was to put together a strategic plan for us, and the other one was to hire a new city manager. Both were accomplished. With that said, I'll entertain a motion to approve or adopt 2017 City of Phoenix strategic plan. ODOT. And for the citizens that we're going to give them a chance to see what the one-lane environment is like. At some point in the future, a year and a half later, we come back to the citizens and let them have input on whether we're going to have 1 lane or 2 lanes. And the council wanted our staff to focus on 1 lane and 2 lane options. That's what they've done, and you guys take it away.
All right, folks. You like it with the lights off or the lights on?
Please.
Okay. Fair enough. Could agree with you.
I'd like to make a motion to leave the lights off.
These slides are in your packets, however. So, I guess at the outset, we want to say if you're watching the live stream, you can log in, and regarding the different objectives associated with the road diet, we want to look at some options that primarily we look to fit this within the curb-to-curb width. It's what we call cartway. The physical curb-to-curb width is from one edge of the parking aisle on the east side to one edge of the parking aisle on the west side of the road. And also, I want to talk about the restraints associated with any of the aspects of the design once we overlay the roadway, because some requirements and regulations kick in at that point when we put new asphalt over that roadway, something that we've discussed at length. And we've got 5 different options laid out here. I think it'd be beneficial if at the end of the meeting we were able to at least look at some and have consideration from the council that said, you don't need to pursue this option any further, or you don't need to pursue that other option, or this aspect of that option any further. Because these are conceptual in nature, what we would traditionally refer to as just a graphic or schematic design stage. What we're trying to do is lay out a cross-section for you. In general, desires.
So forgive
right-hand side of the street, left-hand side of the street, north end heading towards Medford or toward our brand new interchange. You might think that Main Street is just the area between 6th and Oak, but it really isn't. There are transitions going north and south of the couplet. And for terminology purposes, this is what we're going to call the north end of the couplet. This is a transition to ODOT's right-of-way, which begins at the north side of 6th Street. Now, one of the reasons I included this in the project boundary is, as you can see, this is a taper area where you transition from a 2-lane configuration into the single-lane configuration, and the merge lane occurs right along the 6th Street frontage. So if we have to do anything that impacts that merge lane, then we'll be into ODOT for a permit for work in there right away. The south project boundary is just a little bit south of the south couplet island, back where we get into a 4-lane section for 99 and south towards Howell. It's quite possible, given one of the configurations or some of the different configurations that we work on, that the transition will occur well before we reach ODOT's right away there, and we won't need any kind of permitting from ODOT for the south side of the connection. So again, we looked at the minimum width of 42 feet. That section primarily occurs between 4th and 1st. It's a little strange out there. And on our diagrams from here on out, we're going to say north is to the right of you. We'd like to keep the curb-to-curb alignment in place because of the expense associated with having to widen out that section at any point. Also, the impact on the frontages of the businesses along the streetscape, as well as the narrowing of the sidewalks that would occur. The balance of the Main Street frontages from 1st down to Oak is about 44 feet wide. We magically pick up a couple of feet in that cross section from whatever reconstructive efforts had occurred year to year, but it's slightly wider as we get south of 1st Street.
Or we actually lost 2 feet going 1st to 4th because of new sidewalks put in. From 4 foot to 6 foot sidewalks.
Yeah, and there's also a misalignment somewhat of this curb line on the east side as well. So there's it's a combination of a couple of different things, I would say, from past practice.
If I may ask a question of council, am I the only one that sees it a little blurry on the right side? Okay. We're still messing with this, I want to be sure.
So viewable though, but
Yeah.
a little bit more.
I don't know why it's doing that, maybe it's too much on the screen.
Squint a little with your right eye.
Much better.
So as I described before, 1st and 4th, the segment between 1st and 4th being narrows. When we looked at these schemes, we decided to analyze that narrow stretch, saying, boy, if we can fit it in there, we'll be able to fit it in the balance of the streetscape. So primarily our blow-ups or schematics will look at the small segment, 1st to 2nd to 3rd, essentially, because that's where we see the tightest constriction. If we get it to work there, we know we can get it to work between 1st and Oak. Some of the options require reconstruction at the south end of the couplet. Not all treatments, the cross section there, curb to curb, doesn't have enough room for all of the treatments that we'll look at. Because we're going to have to work on some of the details and some of the finer points at both the intersections and the terminal points north and south of the project area. But that's one area of concern for us because it's been newly constructed, trying to look at ways to not reconstruct something that's just been built. We couldn't quite find an option that gave us 2 travel lanes, 2 southbound travel lanes, and a bike lane that fits with parking on both sides. When we go through them slide by slide, you'll see exactly what we're talking about. Anything else here, Evan?
Oh, you got it.
So we want to talk a little bit about the 2015 selected alternative. It was one after, I want to say there were 6 or 7 different alternatives that were reviewed. Some of them had different lane configurations, two-way traffic on Main Street, one-way on Bear Creek. All kinds of different alignments and arrangements were reviewed. And the selected where it was a single travel lane, bulb outs at all the intersections, bike lane and, a bike lane and crosswalks. So this was the schematic, with parking on both sides and exaggerated landscape islands on both sides. This comes right out of the study that was presented during that analysis. So not only did you have a 6-foot sidewalk area, but you had a landscape buffer as well. A very nice streetscape, and that's a very nice graphic of what the streetscape could have been or would have been under that scenario. Also, you'll notice a 12-foot travel lane, a 5-foot bike lane, 8-foot parking on symmetric being it's the same mirrored across the center of the travel. What we got, what that graphic was describing. One thing we didn't get was the pedestrian safety concerns being addressed, which is one of the key items that drove the selection process before. Something this does not do, this wide streetscape for a single travel lane, it doesn't help you with your speeds. We noticed that by people passing each other in the one-lane segment. We see a lot of aberrant movements, and in general terms, when you leave too much asphalt, you're generally asking for aberrant turning movements and higher speeds. So since our existing condition varies, the actual 44-foot wide design that they expressed doesn't actually fit within the 42-foot curve that we have. But this is really what we ended up with. A 14-foot drive lane, 10-foot parking on each side, a 6-foot wide bike lane, and some striped buffers on both sides. So this is part of the problems we're seeing with the road activity right now. I'd have a hard time finding the same cross-section anywhere else, and this is partly what's causing some of the side of the road for an 8-foot parking stall. So this is my idea. You can blame me for it. On the east side of Main Street, my idea was to take that 6-foot area, that land, and remove them and create a sidewalk strip, streetscape furniture strip, and basically an aesthetic enhancement along the east side of the roadway at the expense of approximately 18 parking stalls.
If I can jump in here.
Yeah.
Just, you'll note on all of these images, you've got the numbers showing the widths of the various sections of the street. Anywhere those numbers are black means it meets or exceeds the minimum required in the city's transportation system plan. Anywhere they are red, they do not.
What about, what's about recommended for travel lanes?
There are some standards where you can go below what our minimums are. We are still held to our local standards. Something unless you amend our TSP.
But 10 to 12 your center core. One thing that's important to notice is between 4th and 3rd, there is parking off-street behind the commercial entities that front that block. Between 3rd and 2nd, we'll have as well off-street parking back behind the facilities that front Main Street on the east side. But there is a significant amount of off-street parking along that 3-block segment, and that's why I thought that it would be an available opportunity to remove some of the on-street parking. It's a adding all the elements that we discussed in terms of a 2-lane configuration with parking area on each side, on travel lanes, and a 5-foot bike lane.
That's true.
You want to add?
Not much I want to add on that. Transportation officials, most likely ODOT as well, would recommend that you do 2 treatments below the minimum next to each other, because then you don't have, basically, you've got no free error. And so regardless of what those treatments are, they don't advise mixing them.
With this arrangement, as these intersections, my strong recommendation is that bulb outs get created at all the cross streets and RRFBs be installed at all of the cross streets. For this particular option, option B, I believe it'd be mandatory at every single street crossing. For option A, I could see RRFBs at 4th and 1st, maybe not 2nd and 3rd, because we just haven't established a travel pattern, a pedestrian pattern in those areas. But once we get into an area where we're limiting all of our elements with respect to the widths of the cross section, I feel very strongly that it's going to have to be reinforced by other aspects of the design within the streetscape. So there might be some, for me to really buy into this one, me personally really buy in. You folks make the decision, just that you make the decision. I'm just giving you my opinion that the buy into a cross section is that tight. I will always advocate adding additional controls at the intersections.
Ray, can you break some of that down? So RRFB and bulb out, just explain a little bit there.
The bulb outs are essentially a pedestrian landing area that are created at approximately the depth of the parking stalls. When you're coming from a cross street, you have an area where you can get out. Yeah, you can faintly see it there. That's a bulb out there.
You can almost see the
And that
existing
right
one
there.
a little better.
What you do there is you minimize the crossing distance for the pedestrians. And you're giving them the best opportunity to be visualized by the traffic flow, and you're also minimizing the crossing time it takes to get from one safety zone to the other safety zone. So those bulb outs, I think, are essential for a bunch of different reasons. Plus, it also gives me a place to put the RRFBs, a nice predominant posting of the rapid flashing beacons that identifies the pedestrian at the same location of the flasher. That's very nice to have. Sometimes they're remote, they're not adjacent, and the adjacencies that you want to have with your pedestrians don't really exist. Those bulb outs give you the opportunity to put those two together. It also gives us the opportunity to put in some attractive street furniture options, which we can
Over vehicular. But